Let's get started.
Are you ready to get started?
I'm absolutely ready to get started with this.
Well, this is the Gordon and Cherise show right now. And what an interesting place to be after all of these years. I never thought we would be podcasting about, well, I would say that as we've talked about starting this show, we've talked about the fact that, real estate has been our child and it's served us so well, and it's still a part of our everyday life of everything that we do. But right now we're launching into our grandchild time of life. We have physical grandchildren in Australia, but and we celebrate that. And in many ways, that's the inspiration for what we're doing right now is sowing into that next generation and giving them something that's greater than the messages of despair that can be out there in the world to give some hope, right?
Right. And when I'm looking at this podcast series that we've started, I think the audience needs to understand that this wasn't something that we wanted to do. Mm-hmm. We don't have to do this. We've had urgings in our faith by the Holy Spirit, mm-hmm. and we have a heart for those who chronically suffer.
That's right.
And I've personally dealt with it for 27 years. And what's unique about this podcast is that you've been a part of it for 24 years as a spouse, mm-hmm. and you have a voice as well to deal with chronic suffering. And we've moved from the most desperate times to abundant times.
Right.
And nothing's been that easy. But we have a lot to share that can really help a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm looking at the podcast and I'm looking at the uniqueness of who we are, it's not only going from the doldrums of despair, but it's moving into the fact that we still deal with pain every day. We've had to remold our identity and purpose several times over. We've had to raise a family, a blended family. We've had a successful real estate brokerage for several years. Mm-hmm. And this next thing that we're doing is that we're just following the instincts of our faith, and we're doing it because we do want to help people.
And I think through this whole exercise of our life and the testimony that's been building every year that we've been together going through this pain cycle, we've found that running away from it doesn't take us anywhere. There's no escaping what is right in the middle of our everyday life. It is how we respond to it. And I think that the amazing thing is together, we have found our purpose right in the center of our suffering. Right. And we haven't been able to escape it, but we've actually found a greater love together through suffering.
I agree.
We've found a stronger family dynamic as the kids have grown up and learned that life isn't easy, but we can still be overcomers.
Absolutely.
And then we've also just been able, you've always been there for me and through all of these years in real estate, even if people don't see you all the time on some of the real estate, the social media things that we do, or you're always there. You're in the background of everything I do. And so we've done this life together. It hasn't been easy, but we've chosen to stay together through the path that isn't easy, because our transformation occurs right in the place of that suffering. And I'm so inspired by you every day, because that's what you bring into my life. And that's what I really want people to see in you, is the fact that you're a coach, you're an inspirer, you're a person that perseveres. You're the encourager for people that need encouragement, that have no idea what you really live with every day. And I want people to understand your backstory. So take us back 27 years ago. And what were you doing, and what was life like for you in that stage?
27 years ago. Let me see if I can remember that far back. No, seriously, it's like yesterday. First of all, 27 years ago, I was a practicing chiropractic physician. Mm-hmm. I had a very successful practice. I was very success oriented. I cared about people. I cared about people's health more than anything else. The mantra of your health is more important than anything else, including money and status, and it provides safety, and it's integrated with your faith, and all of that was the track that I was on. And then I sustained injuries. And from sustaining those injuries, I ended up having neck surgery. And it was a complicated neck surgery. In fact, the neurosurgeon, who was a friend of mine at the time, he said that it looked like it took him 6 hours to pull the disc fragments out of my spinal cord. He said it looked like scrambled eggs. And he said, your life is going to change from now on. So I even helped choose the surgery I was going to have. It was called a Smith-Robinson fusion, which titanium plates were placed into my neck, and thought, okay, I could heal more quickly and I could get back to practice and get on with my life. And then 20 days later, after surgery, I sustained a car accident. It was actually a low-impact car accident. And I ended up having 3 more neck surgeries.
Wow.
And so everything I believed in to work for non-surgical healthcare, having that option for patients, vanished overnight. And here I was, ironically, laying on the table having multiple neck surgeries. So that started my venture with chronic pain.
The doctor became the patient.
The doctor became the patient.
Or were you a very good patient?
At first, I think the knowledge, as helpful as it could be, I think it actually inflamed my emotions more because I had expectations of a proper clinical outcome. I had expectations of the practitioners and everyone working on me. I could just watch when a nurse was going to put the needle in my tendon instead of the vein, and I gained patience over that over the long haul. But in the long run, looking back, I had good health care. I had very competent doctors, but I was being torn apart.
How could you not be? I mean, you were at the pinnacle of your life. You were in your 30s.
Right.
Everything was, you had 2 practices, didn't you, at the time?
Correct.
Plus you had hospital medical privileges at Memorial Hospital.
Correct. I just received those. And
so wait, let me just go back to that. You were
Yes.
the only chiropractic physician at the time that could give manipulation under anesthesia.
Correct.
Is that right?
in El Paso County.
Yep.
But I just got those privileges. But I was also part of the diplomat program for chiropractic orthopedics, and everything about my life was specialized. And so I think the things that the audience can understand, it's not that you just deal with pain. There's a crushing of who you are.
Absolutely.
Your identity. In fact, over the long course of what I've dealt with, having my identity completely smashed is actually more emotionally painful, and not understanding your inner man or how that relates to your faith. I think a lot of Christians, they try to do the right things, which I understand the importance of that by walking out their faith, but sometimes suffering comes upon you unexpectedly,
Right.
and undeservedly, and that's what I dealt with. So I went down to the least of these, standing in line for disability with people who were homeless and people who didn't speak English, and I was amongst a population group that I used to help, and now I was part of the group.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and now, people are probably going, Cherise, how did you enter into that story? Right? Because, I mean, that's not a very pretty place to begin a marriage or a story about falling in love. And I mean, seriously, as you're talking about this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what all you went through before. This was before we met. This was 3 years prior to the time where we actually met. And, it's very interesting how our lives, they were literally, it was like a fusion. It was just they were brought together so quickly, so beautifully. But wow, you are a handful already. You know that?
Well, Cherise, I'm reading your mind right now, and I think that you want me to share my side of the story of how we got
mine
together.
will be accurate.
And yours will, yes.
I think I should share that. But
why don't you?
But so, okay. At the time that I entered into the story of your life and Jake's life, you were at your third neck surgery. So you were very confident, and you were in a situation where I think you were on an uphill swing, feeling better. You were getting stronger. You had more optimism and hope, and you actually were planning to go to school to become a lawyer.
Correct.
And so we met because both of us hate these awkward social groups and things like that. So it's really funny that we met at a retreat. And I had resisted going just because I'm a little bit, I'm very introverted by nature, and I don't want to be in the middle of a big group situation. And I had just moved to Colorado. I was a single mom, 22 years old. And I had this 4-year-old with me, and I had no money. I left the comforts of what I could have had or accumulated back in Texas. And I really felt this prompting. It was really a prompting by God that I was going to be moving. And it was a very scary feeling for me, because although my life for the last, all these years in real estate, over 24 years in real estate now, my life is helping people through change, but it's because change terrified me. I think I really identify with change because as a little girl, I moved a lot. And so the thought of moving from Texas to Colorado was a very scary thought, but I felt that I had to do it. And something in me rose up, the faith of it's going to be the best place to raise your son. And I had no idea why or what that story would look like. I had no idea you would enter into my life, but I felt this huge prompting that I needed to go. So my first job here was selling eyeglasses across part of the state of Colorado. So I was driving 1,000 miles a week in my car, and my son was going to daycare, and I was just in tears. I felt lost. I felt like I didn't exactly know how this was going to work. How could I keep driving these miles and selling eyeglasses and, stocking in all these grocery stores, these eyeglasses. And it just, I was humble about it, but I just didn't know that this was really my purpose. But I felt that I had to persevere. And so through that hard time, I kept growing, and I kept sensing that God was peeling the inside of my soul like an onion. Different things were coming out. I was in a state of really being responsive to God and being responsive to the idea that I didn't have to be the victim of being a single mom, or I didn't have to be the victim of anything in the past of my life. I was really searching for what was coming ahead, for the new. And by the prompting of my mom, I will give her credit for this part, she asked me to go to this retreat. And I was not wanting to go at all. In fact, I told her I don't want to go, but I'll do that for her, because that way she could go back to Texas after she helped me move here with a little bit of peace. And so I did sign up for this retreat, and I had no idea what I really signed up for, though, because there was a bunch of people. We were in the mountains, and we were divided up into small groups, and there were groups of us praying in small groups. And I always cry. I was crying and praying in the corner, and I see 2 guys walk in late. Okay. And I mean, in my mind, if this could be a movie, wait, no.
Cherise, thanks.
No. These 2 men walk in late into the retreat. The doors open, and it was kind of dark in there, but these doors open, and it's bright. There you are. Your hair is a little bit windblown. You're kind of sunburned. I didn't realize you were such a golfer then, but you had gotten off of the golf course and you went to the retreat with your friend. And the next thing I know, and I was back in my prayer mode, but I hear this chair behind me, and there you are. There's Gordon. Like you were like kind of right in my face.
Okay.
You saw me and you were very confident. And I remember feeling like, I don't think I've ever met a man in my life as confident as you were at that moment. And then it really helped me because I asked what you did, and you said that you were independently wealthy. And I thought, well, that might be kind of nice. But so it kept the conversation going a little while, right? But truthfully, as we got to know each other that first day, we showed each other pictures of our children. And I just felt this instant connection to you and to Jake. And there was my son, Chris, in these pictures. And I just automatically felt that there was something there. And so we've kind of fast-tracked our life at that point. You can take it from here if you want.
Well, Cherise.
I will correct you, though, if you mess up.
I did not stalk you at the retreat, okay? B, the truth of the matter is that I was in a situation in my life where I was wrestling with what's the truth, what's the value of life, who are the important people in my life. Because once you go through a devastating accident or injury or illness, what happens is that your closest friends scatter like sheep. They don't know what to do. So they don't know how to pray for you. They say they will. They don't know how to assist you. They don't know how to be there. They don't know how to walk alongside of you. So I was helping someone else. A lot of my friends had left. And I was also dealing with being on morphine sulfate to calm the pain down for several years. And you mentioned golf, very abbreviated swing and very easy going, not the full golf I once did. And when I got to the retreat, my version was different because I had been in scripture, I had been in prayer, and I was really seeking earnestly with my heart. And when I saw you with your head bowed, I already knew that second you were going to be my wife. And it was like a voice had just spoken with inside of me, a megaphone. She is going to be your wife. And I wasn't ready to get married. I wasn't in love. But I listened to that voice, and obviously the connection that we had was super fast.
How fast?
We were married within 21 days.
Start to finish.
Start to finish.
From
We met
the
on a
first day.
We met on a May 3rd.
It's ridiculous.
We were married on May 24th.
Yep.
And that was almost 25 years ago. And so a big part of it is that we prayed together almost every day, 5 to 6 hours a day.
We did.
And we had something very, very special. And we saw the parts of our lives that other people might not have their eyes open to. We started the marriage bright, optimistic, full of hope. We're coming together as a family. And then I contracted approximately 6 months later. I was off my medication. I had contracted, at the time it was termed reflex sympathetic dystrophy, which is now complex regional pain syndrome. And that's a condition where if you, for instance, were to touch or just knock one part of your arm, you would maybe receive 10 efferent impulses back to your brain. Someone with the RSD might get 10,000 impulses. So I had a condition that made me hypersensitive to everything. And so during that time, I could not differentiate between hot and cold. It felt like someone had put a burning match on my skin. My nail beds in my left hand and feet, you could not see. They were so swollen. And I did not sleep for 45 straight days. I was in pure agony. So I was actually naked. I could not even wear clothes.
I couldn't touch you.
You couldn't touch me.
You couldn't receive even the comfort of being held or a touch.
Right.
And that was, I can't even describe how hard that was for both of us. And
Very difficult. And I think that's when you really started the deep journey with the chronic suffering.
There was definitely a moment, a choice, being the spouse of somebody going through something this horrendous. And as the spouse, I think that the question is, when you're not the one suffering, are you going to stand by the one who is? Or are you going to run?
Right.
And I was 23 years old at that time.
Right.
And honestly, there was a choice to either run or to stay. And I knew that if I ran, I might have all the freedoms that a 23-year-old might be looking for with life and escaping pain, if that makes sense. But again, it was a moment of grace. The grace was, stay. You love him. Stay. And God gave me the grace to stay and to endure with you and to see through the layers of the stuff that we couldn't even penetrate on our own. Just that there was going to be something beyond this. And the doctor, you were in the hospital, like at the point, as you were saying, you didn't sleep for 45 days. Even your wedding ring got soldered off. We had to get it soldered off because you looked like the Elephant Man. Like your extremities were so swollen, your feet, your hands. And so we eventually had to go to the emergency room where the doctors actually took you in, checked you into the hospital, and shut your nervous system down just to have some relief from this debilitating pain that wouldn't stop. And I just remember it was like watching somebody that you love so much be on fire. I mean, your body was on fire. Every nerve in your body was hyper reactive, and it was responding to this torturous thing. And then I was looking at you for the response. I mean, even when you had nothing to give, you gave. That's the remarkable thing about you through that time, and a part of you that is still true today. So share what you shared with me in that moment.
That moment 24 years ago, I was naked on the hospital bed and I couldn't be touched. And I was a quadriplegic, in a state of quadriplegia. And you were crying and scared to death. And you asked me, what are we going to do, honey? And I looked at you very confidently and said, we are going to praise God. And this is not the final signature of our lives. Pain is not the final sentence to what our life is about. And we're going to praise God because we're going to stick with our faith. And we're going to get through this. So instead of dodging the pain, instead of being in denial of it, it was time to walk right through it. Mm-hmm. And it took a lot of courage.
You did.
And it took a lot of courage for you to be there. And so we walked through it. And
truthfully, our kids did too.
Our kids did. Remarkable.
They were crying too. They were a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old at the time. And I'll never forget the fact that they're as much a part of the story as we are, because they didn't even know how to process all of this. But they were a big part of the reason to keep going through it. Right?
Right.
So I think we have shared the backstory so that people can know this is where kind of our pain journey together began. And we're not through with the journey, but we want to invite people to come alongside of the lessons that we've learned as we've worked through this time, and we've overcome years and years now of chronic suffering.
We have. And the truth of the matter is we live abundantly through chronic pain. You're very successful in real estate, and you have been for a few decades. But again, you mentioned earlier in the podcast that you had to step in and take the number one role. And then I, who was a doctor, had to take the number 2 role. So there was a lot of humility. There was a lot of changes, role reversals. We did that with the kids. We made it work, but more importantly, we tried to follow the voice of God through the entire process.
Yeah. And Gordon, you led with optimism and you led with hope, which I can say that a lot of people struggle to find in the middle of chronic issues, and it's understandable. But I think you were given a special measure of hope that is meant to, it wasn't just meant for our family, but it was meant to inspire other people in their moments of pain or suffering. I'm so proud of you.
Well, thank you. But for the audience, this is the first podcast, so we're introducing ourselves. The podcast series is going to contain, it's not just about chronic pain. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about things like finances, blended family issues. We have kids now that are 32 and 29. We have grandchildren. We're philanthropic with our community. We have a heart with our faith. We've been involved in several ministries. All of this abundant living has happened with chronic pain, and chronic pain has brought more intimacy into our lives, mm-hmm. with our relationship with Christ, but more so on a practical basis that people can see. It's within our marriage and our family.
I think so. Definitely.
And so
it takes the fluff out.
Right. When we're looking and talking about these issues, we're not just focusing on pain. We're focusing on life-giving. Yeah.
Abundance in the pain. There is life in the pain.
Right.
There's so much life to live, and there's so much to give.
And I think there's a lot of practical things to share. And I know that we want this podcast to have a lot of meat to the message, mm-hmm. not just fluff. We want to dive deep into the issues. We want to share things that are going to help people when their hope is depleted.
So share one thing that you want to leave the audience with today.
Well, I think that the truth of the matter is that hope lasts as long as you believe in it. Mm. And who are you hoping for, or putting your hope in? I think that's one of the biggest issues. It's not just having your needs being taken care of, but it's having a fulfillment of who you are and being able to share treasures in your heart, though you have some chronic suffering.
Wow. That's a good thought.
Thanks. I can't wait for the next podcast.
Yep.
So.
See you next week, honey.
Okay, let's go.